Let's get some cut-through common sense with David Penberthy, News Corp columnist with the Australian breakfast radio host at 5AA in Adelaide. Good to talk to you again, Pembo. I want to show you first up a little bit of Alex Jones, this sort of extreme right conspiracy theorist from the US, a bloke who's pretended for years that the horrific Sandy Hook elementary school massacre, where more than 20 kids were killed, he's pretended that this was a hoax to try and allow governments to ban guns. He's just a nutter, and the law's finally caught up with him. Here's a sample of what he's been saying.
The official story of Sandy Hook has more holes in it than Swiss cheese.
My gut tells me the White House, people controlling the governments were involved in this. So don't ever think the globalists that have hijacked this country wouldn't stage something like this. They kill little kids all day, every day. And it's not our government, it's the globalist. I mean, they're doing it. They're doing it. They're staging it.
Yeah, what a sick man. Now, people have sued him. Parents of some of the victims have sued him. He's been ordered to pay more than $1 billion in Australian money. Look, I understand that that'll be reduced on appeal or whatever, but he's going to have to pay a fortune for the filth he's been promulgating. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that beyond what he himself had said, one of the worst aspects of this case, Chris, is what he unleashed with his demented followers. I mean, the families of these kids who've suffered a hellish experience, which I, as a parent, don't know how these people can even keep on living, frankly. They were getting death threats. They were getting photos of their children sent to them saying, you killed your child in order to discredit the gun lobby. You were part of a government plot. And I think that the judgment today has actually got ramifications that might sort of tighten up some of the parameters around which intelligent free speech can operate, because we've seen this sort of assault on history on a number of fronts, everything from the so-called truth about the moon landing or the so-called truth about 9/11, this nut with his so-called truth about Sandy Hook. Like, there has to be a certain thing as historical truth. You can then argue from an ideological position around what caused events to happen, but largely due to the internet, we now live in an age where people choose to believe whether events occurred or not in the first place, and it's seriously unhinged. And I think this bloke's got his totally deserved comeuppance, and anyone who was mad enough to follow him and to go down the path of actually harassing those families should face some sort of penalty too, I reckon.
Absolutely. And when you talk about curbs on free speech, you want to limit them. But one of the, you have defamation, of course, but one of them is incitement. And people should never incite others to do unreasonable acts, especially violent acts. And I suppose that's what we're suggesting with Alex Jones here. There's been an element of incitement there, hasn't there? Apart from the nuttiness.
Oh, for sure. And I sort of think some of these things where, it intrudes into the private world of people who have been victimised. I mean, one of the worst examples, and in hindsight, we as a country were far too blasé about it, but so much of Man Haron Monis prior to the Lint Cafe siege in Sydney, he made a point of deliberately targeting the bereaved wives of servicemen who'd lost their lives in Afghanistan. They were getting threatening letters from him. And I think that people who are in this incredibly sort of pained position who face that kind of harassment need greater protections. And, I was reminded of that this morning, hearing about this bloke finally getting what he so richly deserved.
No, you're spot on. Man Haron Monis was prosecuted over that, but not severely enough, obviously. Hey, this leads me tangentially, really, to Joe Biden and gun control. He did a significant interview yesterday, Joe Biden. There were a few interesting bits to it, but one that I just want to show here is where he's challenged at the end about him being fit for the job, whether he's too old and losing his marbles or whatever. And he hits back about how vigorous he is and how much he's done. And he says he's going to deliver more on gun control, banning assault weapons. Have a look.
And by the way, I'm going to get assault weapons banned. Before this is over, I'm going to get that again. Not a joke. And watch. And so I just think there's it's a matter of, has anybody done more in the first 2 years of their administration for a guy who was, they've been saying this about my age since I began to run. And so, you know, you can come work out with me in the morning.
Anytime.
I reckon I'd work out with him, and it might make me feel pretty good. And I love the way every time he says something serious now, he has to say it's not a joke. It's not a joke. But this is the first time I've heard him say he's going to ban assault weapons. It's a big task. We know that's not easy to do in the States. If he does that'll be a step forward.
Well, I'm with you, Chris. I have seen no sort of John Howard-style sort of post-Port Arthur plan from the president. But, you know, you'd have to be extremely cynical about this. I've got to say that as a journalist, and particularly starting work so early here doing breakfast radio, I mean, you can almost set your clock by these terrible massacres that happen in the United States. Often we get into work at Sparrows here to start the radio show. There's been another one overnight our time in the US, and it's sort of stuck in this sort of thoughts and prayers rut where nothing tangible comes from it. And if something like the most recent atrocity in Uvalde, Texas, triggers all of these sort of tangential discussions about maybe there was a problem with the doors at the school.
Yeah.
You know,
God.
No one's prepared to actually do what we did as a nation after the horror that was unleashed by Bryant in '96 and say the problem is the power of these weapons. So if he's going to do it, good luck to him. But, geez, you know, given the difficulty he seems to have addressing other more pressing issues like cost of living, or indeed, for that matter, you know, getting through a reasonably uncomplicated sentence and making it to the end without slipping up, I can't say I'm filled with optimism about it.
I wouldn't be putting the mortgage on it, but we wish him good luck. Thanks for joining us, Pembo. Appreciate it.